You've been lied to about love, friendship, and relationships your entire life. Society has convinced you that persistence is romantic, that chasing shows dedication, that fighting for someone proves your commitment. But here's the brutal truth. Nobody wants to tell you every time you chase someone who doesn't respect you, you're not showing love, you're showing desperation. You're not proving your worth, you're proving you don't know your worth. You're not being romantic, you're being pathetic. And the worst part, the people you're chasing know it. They see it, and they're using your weakness against you while laughing behind your back. There's a butterfly in your garden right now, and it's killing itself. Not literally. But watch what happens when this beautiful creature spots a busy bee moving from flower to flower. The butterfly becomes obsessed. It abandons its own path, its own purpose, its own beautiful flight pattern, and begins this desperate chase. Around and around it goes, following the bee that couldn't care less about its presence. The bee is focused on its mission, collecting nectar, doing what bees do best. But the butterfly is burning through its precious energy, wearing down its delicate wings, all for someone who never even acknowledged its existence. You are that butterfly. And right now, in your life, there's a bee you're chasing who doesn't even know you exist. This is not a story about insects. This is a story about you, about me, about every single person who has ever looked at their phone waiting for a text that never comes, who has ever bent over backwards for someone who wouldn't even lean forward for them, who has ever invested emotional currency in people who treat them like they're worthless. But here's what that butterfly doesn't understand. And here's what you need to understand right now. The moment you start chasing, you've already lost. The moment you begin that desperate pursuit, you've communicated something profound about how you see yourself. You've announced to the world that you believe they have something you don't have. You've declared that their attention, their approval, their presence in your life is worth more than your own peace of mind. And that's a lie. Your energy is the most precious currency you possess. Not your money, not your time, not even your talents. Your energy. Every morning you wake up with a finite amount of it. Every day you make choices about where to invest it. And every night you go to bed either richer or poorer based on those investments. When you chase people who don't respect you, you're making the worst investment possible. You're taking your precious energy and throwing it into a black hole. You're watering dead plants. You're trying to fill a bucket that has no bottom. But there's something even more devastating happening. When you chase people who don't respect you, you're not just losing your energy, you're training them to disrespect you even more. You're teaching them that your attention comes cheap, that your presence has no value, that they can treat you however they want, and you'll still come running back. Think about the last time someone really respected you. I mean really respected you. Was it because you chased them? Was it because you begged for their attention? Was it because you made yourself available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? No. It was because you carried yourself with dignity. It was because you knew your worth and you weren't willing to negotiate it. Respect is never given to those who demand it. Respect is never earned through pursuit. Respect is commanded through presence, through knowing who you are and being comfortable with that truth. But here's where most people get it wrong. They think respect is about what other people think of them. They think respect is about external validation. They think respect is about being liked by everyone. That's not respect. That's approval addiction. That's people pleasing. That's emotional slavery. Real respect starts with you respecting yourself enough to walk away from people who don't see your value. Real respect means you stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Real respect means you quit trying to convince people to give you what you deserve and start giving it to yourself. The butterfly in that garden has options. It can continue this exhausting chase, wearing itself out, accomplishing nothing, growing more frustrated by the minute. Or it can remember what it was created to do. It can remember its own beauty, its own purpose, its own unique flight pattern. It can stop chasing and start attracting. Because here's a truth that will change your life when you stop chasing people who don't respect you. You create space for people who do. When you stop investing in relationships that drain you, you have energy to invest in relationships that strengthen you. When you stop trying to convince people of your worth, you start attracting people who already see it. The bee in that garden isn't more valuable than the butterfly. The bee isn't more important, more special, more worthy of attention. The bee is simply focused on its own mission, its own purpose, its own work. And that focus, that confidence, that self-assurance is what makes it attractive. You have your own mission, you have your own purpose, you have your own work to do in this world. And every moment you spend chasing people who don't respect you is a moment stolen from the life you're supposed to be living. The question isn't whether you deserve respect. You do. The question is whether you respect yourself enough to stop begging for it from people who will never give it to you. The question is whether you're ready to stop being the butterfly and start being the bee. Now let me tell you about a diamond that forgot it was a diamond. This precious stone was found in a coal mine, covered in dirt and grime, surrounded by ordinary rocks. For years, it sat there believing it was just another piece of coal. It watched as miners picked up the coal around it, giving it value, attention, purpose. The diamond became desperate. It started calling out to the miners, begging them to notice it, to pick it up, to give it the same attention they gave to the coal. But the diamond was covered in so much dirt from trying to be like the coal that the miners couldn't see its true nature. The more it begged, the more it diminished itself. The more it tried to convince them it was valuable, the more it looked like everything else in that mine. The diamond had forgotten a fundamental truth. Its value wasn't determined by who recognized it. Its worth was built into its very nature. You are that diamond. And right now, you're covered in the dirt of other people's opinions, other people's rejection, other people's inability to see your worth. You've been sitting in the coal mine of relationships that don't serve you, begging people to pick you up, to notice you, to give you the validation that you already possess within yourself. But here's what happens when you operate from a place of scarcity instead of abundance. When you believe there's not enough respect to go around, not enough love to go around, not enough appreciation to go around, you start competing for scraps. You start accepting crumbs and calling it a feast. You start lowering your standards and calling it flexibility. The scarcity mindset tells you that if this person doesn't want you, maybe nobody will. It tells you that if you don't fight for their attention, you'll be alone forever. It tells you that half of their respect is better than none at all. But that's not mathematics. That's desperation talking. The abundance mindset knows something completely different. It knows that there are billions of people in this world, and many of them are looking for exactly what you have to offer. It knows that your value doesn't decrease because someone fails to see it, it knows that you don't have to convince anyone of your worth, because the right people will recognize it immediately. When you chase people who don't respect you, you're communicating scarcity. You're telling them that their attention is rare, that their approval is hard to come by, that their presence in your life is more valuable than your presence in theirs. And people always move away from desperation, because desperation is unattractive. But when you carry yourself with the confidence of someone who knows their worth, when you move through the world with the assurance of someone who understands their value, you communicate abundance. You tell people that you're not desperate for their approval, because you already have something better, your own. Here's the truth about respect that most people never understand. Respect is magnetic, not mechanical. You can't create it through effort. You can't manufacture it through persistence. You can't force it through argument or manipulation. Respect is attracted to confidence, drawn to self-assurance, magnetized by people who don't need it to survive. Think about the people in your life who command respect without asking for it. They're not the ones sending multiple texts when they don't get a response. They're not the ones explaining themselves to people who don't want to understand. They're not the ones bending over backwards to accommodate people who wouldn't cross the street for them. The people who command respect are the ones who respect themselves first. They set boundaries and stick to them. They say no without guilt and yes without resentment. They invest their energy in people who appreciate it and withdraw it from people who take it for granted. But here's what happens when you don't respect yourself. You teach other people not to respect you either. You show them that your boundaries are negotiable, that your standards are flexible, that your worth is up for debate. You train them to treat you as an option while you treat them as a priority. The diamond in that coal mine had to make a choice. It could continue trying to be coal, continue begging for attention from miners who were looking for something else, continue diminishing itself to fit in, or it could remember what it was created to be. It could clean off the dirt, reveal its true nature, and attract the kind of attention it actually deserved. When that diamond finally stopped trying to be coal, something amazing happened. The right person walked into that mine. Someone who knew how to recognize a diamond when they saw one. They didn't have to be convinced. They didn't have to be begged. They saw the value immediately and treated it accordingly. Your job isn't to convince people of your worth. Your job is to know your worth so clearly that you only attract people who already see it. Your job is to respect yourself so deeply that disrespect becomes impossible to ignore and unacceptable to tolerate. There was once a master craftsman who created the most beautiful furniture in the entire kingdom. His workshop was always busy. His pieces were always in demand, and people traveled from far and wide to commission his work. He had an apprentice, a young man eager to learn the trade, who noticed something peculiar about his master's behavior. Whenever a customer came to the workshop, the master never chased after them. He never called them repeatedly to check if they were still interested. He never lowered his prices to compete with cheaper alternatives. He never begged them to choose his work over others. Instead, he would show them his craftsmanship, explain the quality of his materials, and then simply wait. The apprentice couldn't understand this approach. One day, he asked his master, "Why don't you pursue customers more aggressively? Why don't you convince them to buy from you?" The master smiled and said something that changed the young man's life forever. When you chase, you create distance. When you are confident in your value, You create attraction. This is the law of pursuit. And it applies to every relationship in your life. The harder you chase someone, the faster they run away. The more you pursue someone who doesn't want to be caught, the more they will resist being caught. The more you try to convince someone of your worth, the more they will question whether you actually have any. It's not personal, it's psychological. Human beings are wired to value what they cannot easily obtain and to take for granted what comes too easily. When you make yourself constantly available, when you're always the one initiating contact, when you're always the one making the effort, you're communicating that your time and attention have no value. But there's something deeper happening here. When you chase people who don't respect you, you're not just damaging your relationship with them, you're damaging your relationship with yourself. You're training your mind to believe that you're not enough as you are. You're teaching your heart that love must be earned through desperation rather than attracted through confidence. Neediness is not attractive. Desperation is not magnetic. Anxiety is not appealing. When you approach people from a place of need rather than a place of strength, you repel the very thing you're trying to attract. You push away the respect you're trying to earn. The master craftsman understood something that most people never learn. Confidence is the most attractive quality a person can possess. Not arrogance, not pride, not superiority. Confidence. The quiet assurance that comes from knowing your worth and being comfortable with that knowledge. When you know your value, you don't have to advertise it. When you understand your worth, you don't have to debate it. When you respect yourself, you don't have to beg others to do the same. Your presence speaks for itself. Your actions demonstrate your character. Your consistency proves your reliability. But here's the part that most people find hardest to accept. Sometimes the people you're chasing aren't supposed to be in your life. Sometimes their rejection is protection. Sometimes their distance is a gift. Sometimes their inability to see your worth is information you need to make better choices about where to invest your energy. The craftsman's customers came to him because they recognized quality when they saw it. They didn't need to be convinced. They didn't need to be pursued. They saw the value and they acted on it. The people who walked away weren't his customers. They were someone else's. And that was perfectly fine with him. When you stop chasing people who don't respect you, you create space for people who do. When you stop investing in relationships that drain you, you have energy for relationships that fulfill you. When you stop trying to convince people of your worth, you start attracting people who already see it. The law of pursuit is simple. What you chase runs away. What you attract comes to stay. There was a farmer who inherited 2 fields from his father. One field was fertile, rich with nutrients, perfect for growing crops. The other field was barren, rocky, resistant to every seed he planted. But the farmer had a strange habit. Every morning he would wake up and spend all his time, all his water, all his energy trying to make the barren field produce. He would work from sunrise to sunset, pouring bucket after bucket of precious water onto ground that would never yield a harvest. Meanwhile, the fertile field sat neglected. Weeds grew where crops should have flourished. The soil that was ready to produce abundance was ignored while the farmer exhausted himself on impossible ground. Years passed. The farmer grew frustrated, bitter, angry. He blamed the weather, the seeds, everything except his own choices. He never understood that his problem wasn't the quality of his effort. His problem was the direction of his effort. Your energy is like that farmer's water. You have a limited supply, And where you choose to pour it determines what kind of harvest you reap in your life. Right now, you're probably watering barren ground. You're investing your emotional energy in people who will never appreciate it. You're pouring your time and attention into relationships that will never give you a return. But there's fertile ground in your life too. There are people who value your presence, who appreciate your efforts, who respect your boundaries, who celebrate your successes. These are the people who text you back. These are the people who keep their promises. These are the people who show up when you need them. These are the people who see your worth without you having to prove it. The principle is simple. Energy flows where attention goes. Whatever you focus on expands. Whatever you invest in grows. Whatever you neglect withers. When you spend your days chasing people who don't respect you, you're not just wasting energy. You're stealing that energy from the people who deserve it. This is the compound effect of relationships. When you invest in people who appreciate you, that investment grows. They invest back in you. They respect you more. They value you more. They treat you better. It becomes a positive cycle that lifts everyone involved. But when you invest in people who don't respect you, that investment disappears. It's like throwing money into a fire. It's like planting seeds in concrete. It's like trying to fill a bucket with holes in the bottom. No matter how much you pour in, it all leaks out. The farmer eventually learned this lesson, but it took him years of frustration and failure. One day, he stopped watering the barren field and turned his attention to the fertile ground. Within months, he had the most abundant harvest in the region. The fertile field had been waiting for his attention all along. You have fertile ground in your life right now. You have people who are ready to respect you, appreciate you, value you. But you might be so busy chasing the people who don't that you're missing the people who do. Selective association is not about being mean or exclusive. It's about being wise with your energy. It's about recognizing that your time and attention are gifts, not obligations. It's about understanding that you can't love people into loving you back. But you can love the people who already love you forward. Stop watering dead plants. Start watering the relationships that are ready to bloom. Stop chasing people who run away. Start investing in people who run toward you. The harvest you've been waiting for is already in your life. You just need to redirect your energy toward the fertile ground. Let me tell you about Maria, a woman who worked at a small accounting firm in the heart of the city. For 3 years, she had been in love with her colleague James, not just attracted to him, but deeply, desperately in love. She would arrive at work early just to see him. She would stay late hoping he would ask her to dinner. She would bring him coffee and help him with his projects, cover for him when he was late, and laugh at jokes that weren't funny. James knew, of course he knew. He wasn't blind or stupid. He saw the way she looked at him, the way she dropped everything when he needed something, the way she made herself available for his every whim, and he used it. He used her feelings like a credit card he never intended to pay back. He would flirt with her just enough to keep her hope alive, but never enough to commit to anything real. He would take her help, but give her nothing in return. He would accept her kindness, but never reciprocate her respect. Maria's friends could see what was happening. They tried to tell her, but she wouldn't listen. She had convinced herself that if she just tried harder, if she just showed him how much she cared, if she just proved her worth, he would eventually see her value. She was watering barren ground and calling it gardening. One day, everything changed. Maria walked into the office and overheard James talking to another colleague. He was making jokes about her devotion, mocking her feelings, describing her as desperate and clingy. The words hit her like a physical blow. But in that moment of pain, something inside her shifted. She realized that she had been begging for respect from someone who was never going to give it to her that day. Maria made a decision that would change her life forever. She stopped chasing. She stopped bringing him coffee. She stopped staying late. She stopped making herself available for his convenience. She stopped laughing at his jokes. She stopped being the emergency contact for his chaos. She simply stopped. James noticed immediately. Of course he did. He had grown accustomed to her attention, her availability, her willingness to drop everything for him. He started asking her questions. Is everything okay? Are you upset about something? Did I do something wrong? But Maria had learned something powerful. You don't owe anyone an explanation for respecting yourself. She was polite but distant, professional but not personal, available for work but not for manipulation. She had built boundaries and she was going to protect them. Something remarkable happened. Other people in the office started noticing Maria differently. They saw her confidence, her self-respect, her refusal to be taken advantage of. They started seeking her opinion, valuing her input, treating her with the respect she had always deserved, but never demanded. And James began to see her differently too. For the first time in 3 years, he started pursuing her. He started asking her to lunch, trying to get her attention, wondering why she was no longer available at his beck and call. But Maria had learned something that most people never understand. When someone only wants you after you stop wanting them, they don't want you. They want the validation you used to provide. They want the ego boost you used to give them. They want the control they used to have over you. Maria had developed something more valuable than James's attention. She had developed unshakable confidence. She knew her worth, and she wasn't willing to negotiate it anymore. She had learned that respect isn't something you can earn from people who don't want to give it. Respect is something you command by respecting yourself first. 6 months later, Maria met David at a coffee shop near her office. David was different. He noticed her immediately, not because she was chasing him, but because she carried herself with a confidence that was magnetic. He asked for her number, and she gave it to him. He called when he said he would call. He showed up when he said he would show up. He respected her boundaries because she had boundaries to respect. David didn't need to be convinced of Maria's worth. He saw it immediately. He didn't need to be begged for his attention. He gave it freely. He didn't need to be chased. He chose to stay. This is what happens when you stop chasing people who don't respect you. You create space for people who do. You attract the energy you radiate. You receive the respect you give yourself. But here's the most important part of Maria's story. The transformation wasn't about finding David. The transformation was about finding herself. She had learned to validate herself instead of seeking validation from others. She had learned to approve of herself instead of desperately seeking approval from people who withheld it. She had learned that her worth wasn't up for debate, negotiation, or discussion. And you know your worth. You don't have to prove it. When you respect yourself, you don't have to beg others to do the same. When you understand your value, you attract people who already see it. This is the magnetic power of self-respect. The butterfly stopped chasing the bee and remembered how to fly. The diamond cleaned off the dirt and revealed its brilliance. The craftsman focused on his craft and attracted the right customers. The farmer redirected his water to fertile ground and reaped an abundant harvest. And Maria stopped chasing someone who didn't respect her and found someone who did. Your story can have the same ending, but it starts with a decision. It starts with you choosing to respect yourself enough to walk away from people who don't. It starts with you understanding that your energy is precious, your time is valuable, and your presence is a gift. Stop chasing people who don't respect you. Start attracting people who do. Your future self will thank you for the decision you make today.